I don't know what to do for a transition that wouldn't be considered pretty toxic, I guess. So we're just gonna launch into it. Star Wars. So
Oh boy.
uh, we
Never
know
seen it.
Dustin's a big. Yeah, I've never seen it yet. Uh, no, we're all pretty big Star Wars here. I think that's safe to say. Um, it's so we've had a. It's been a while now, but Andrew and I had a very long episode, very
Hmm.
long talk, just all Star Wars, kind of breaking
Yes.
it down, and our thoughts. But you weren't there, so we didn't know your thoughts. So I thought I'd take the opportunity when we have a story in the news about J.J. Abrams interview he did, um, where he's asked about if he likes the way that they sort of handed off the visions, like changing hands for the trilogy, and if he liked that approach and whatever. And he's sort of,
Mhm.
a lot of the internet took it and sort of ran in a more like, I don't know. When I saw the headlines and then I read it, there were two separate things in
Mhm.
Hmm.
in ways.
Yep.
But he did very much sort of have trouble spitting out um, what he liked and didn't like about the process they had. And I guess before we get into any of that necessarily, what is your take on Star Wars in general and the state of Star Wars and anything you feel like sharing in that
Oh
regard?
boy. Um, so much. How
Here,
much
I
time
can
do we
I
have?
can I can I can start you off with a very like focused question
Okay,
because
Let's
this
do
go
has
it.
ahead.
been a source of debate between John and I.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm
oh,
interested to know
okay.
where you fall on this.
Okay,
John's like,
let's say
"Oh,
this.
oh, it's on now."
Let's say
Yeah.
this. Okay, whatever Dustin says is the tiebreaker, and we have to do that.
Oh
Oh
boy.
God. Okay. All
So
right. The
now one of
pressure's
you is
on,
gonna hate
Dustin.
me forever.
Pressure's
Great.
on,
All right.
Dustin. And I won't
Yeah.
tell you who's who. So
Yeah.
we've had a debate about how to watch Star Wars
Oh.
and whether or not you should start with episode one and take it there, like chronologically in the Star Wars universe.
Mm.
Or if you should start chronologically with release date and start with A New Hope, kind of watch the original trilogy and then go, okay, now I can go back and now I can go forward. So,
Is
what would
this
you be?
just the Skywalker saga, or is this also the ancillary, like Rogue One and
We
Solo?
definitely discussed the inclusion of the other content.
Mhm. Yes.
Okay.
One of us, I don't know if I'd say one of us has a specific view and one of us has another, but like I
Yeah,
know
I mean,
where I stand on that.
yeah, I think
Okay.
we were mostly talking about like the Skywalker saga, but we did also talk about, of course, like the ancillary movies.
Okay. Well, sorry to whichever of you I am currently defying right now, but I think I have to stick with starting out with the release date of starting the original trilogy of 4, 5, 6. Oh
Son
no!
of a bitch. Oh my God.
But here's why. Here's
Yes!
I was
why.
so
Here's why.
confident you would say the
Yes!
right answer. Okay, all right.
Yes!
Yep.
Here's why. No, I don't
Dustin gets
believe
to
that
come on all
watching
the
it
shows.
from 1 to 9 is wrong. I think that is still a great way to watch it. But for me
Yes.
personally, the the importance of the prequel trilogy is knowing where Anakin is going and being able to see those seeds planting and how that stuff came to be. Otherwise, I feel like a lot of stuff gets lost in which you have to, or you would want to maybe go back and watch them after you see the story of Luke and Darth Vader after that. And then the sequel trilogy is a whole other thing that always comes
Right.
last no matter what. So um, I just feel like I wouldn't have really, because do they even say that his name is Anakin in 4, 5, and 6? There's a
Yes,
trivia question.
yes, they do.
Yes.
They do.
Okay.
Obi-Wan tells Luke about that. Definitely
Yes.
in like spirit form,
Okay.
Jedi Ghost form. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I just feel like someone coming into it, not knowing anything about Star Wars, that's gonna, I mean, one of the greatest twists of all time, no one will ever deny, is in Cloud City when Luke is told that Darth Vader is his father.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're savvy enough, you're gonna know that before you even get to that film, understanding where Luke came from. So it's like you're taking away some of the punch of both the prequels and the original trilogy if you're seeing everything chronologically, in my mind. Now, after you've seen them all, I've definitely gone through and watched them 1 through 9 because
Oh yeah.
it's fun to see it progress. But I feel like for someone who doesn't know anything, the best way to unroll that story is the way that it was released because that's the way they thought about how to make those films, at least. Like,
Mhm.
George Lucas didn't want to jump into the nitty gritty of politics in space on his first movie because he knew no one would get on board with that. So, like, let it.
I mean, so I take your point, and I think that's always the one thing that I've like the one holdup was yes, the reveal of
Mhm.
Luke's father is the one piece, and I understand also the going through them in the release order and then wanting to see how you got there, but a lot of things do the from the beginning, and then it's when you go back that you appreciate, so it's like when you watch a film and you don't notice all the foreshadowing, and then you go
Mhm.
back and like, all those moments that were like telegraphed to me and like that now make more sense, so it is the benefit of the second viewing, that you definitely you get some of those things. And with the original intent, like I'm definitely usually for the idea of like following the original intent of Lucas, but part of that is, if I remember correctly, he had his 9 films, or at least 6, and he didn't know if he was going to get to make more than one.
Mhm.
So he had to sort of pick, where am I going to do this? So if he had been given carte blanche, yeah, of course we want your space opera that no one is interested in, whatever. Of course we want that. Here's all this money. Would he have instead gone and done 1 through 9? Or would he have
Mhm.
still chosen to start in the middle, where like I think in his mind was the core of the conflict
Right.
and
Mhm.
on the resolution and stuff, versus like the how we got there. If
Yeah.
so it's like, if you had to chop something, what are you gonna chop?
Mhm. Well, to me, like I always think it's so fascinating to watch like the middle trilogy first, and then not only obviously for like the surprise of the reveal, that Darth Vader is Luke's father, but also like this is the character, and this is how he's like the bane of the Rebel Alliance's existence. And then you like go back to the first movie and you see this adorable little kid and you're like, how do we get here? Like that's part of like the hook, that's part of the pull of like, I am
Mhm.
so invested to see like where this adorable little 8-year-old goes, or, obviously depending on your view, some find him annoying. But for me, it was like this cute little kid doing pod races. And then like, how do we get to, you know, part man, part machine, all evil, or,
Yeah.
98% evil because Luke sees some
Mhm.
redeeming qualities, but
Right.
semantics. I just
Mhm.
thought that was like part of the hook of the first trilogy. And when I say first, I mean chronologically first,
Mhm.
is that like I just have no idea how we're gonna get here, and I'm fascinated to find out.
Yeah, I would say that if George Lucas did have all the authority, like he somehow gained all of his notoriety, and they're like, do it, make your 9 films, whatever you want to do, he definitely would not have done the first 3 or episodes 1, 2, and 3 the same way he did, because he wouldn't have had, the audience knowing who these characters were and how to weave them back in time to see where they got to that point. It would have probably been a little bit closer to the original trilogy, where he's following the hero's journey. And I mean, I know he kind of does that on his own in most of the movies, but I think he would have approached it totally different, because you wouldn't be looking at that little boy being like, "That's him." Like, you'd just be like, okay, this little kid, Jar Jar Binks, is obviously going to become Darth Vader. So
he's obviously already the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, but that would be the twist in that, right? We're experiencing the hero's journey. You're seeing Anakin, leave home and rise up to something greater. And then we see him becoming like troublesome, and it's are you going to get over that phase and become the hero, or are you gonna like stick on this path? And I think most people would assume, okay, he's troubled, but he's our hero, and or how would we see that, and obviously it would be, I don't know, it would be very different. Like, imagine the first time you hear like that like throne room kind of theme, that evil theme, when they give you just a little bit when he is like on Tatooine and he kills all the Tusken Raiders and stuff. And like, that's the first time you hear it. Obviously that means so much more to you in that moment, having knowing that piece of music, that alone. That creates greater impact there. I'm envious of the person that is able to see these 1 through 9, 1 through 6, and experience that.
Yeah.
Because I'll never get to experience that. And I want to know what that's like. Would we appreciate his descent like more, having it one way or the other? I think some people felt it was it's a little quick, his slide to the dark side and like turning. And I think maybe there's some other content that gives more context, but would you feel like, oh, that's quick because we know where he's going? Or is it like, would it be worse the other way around?
Sure. Yeah,
I mean,
it's tough because I feel like, unfortunately, I'll just say quick, like, unfortunately, the first 3 are a bit unevenly paced in terms of his descent. Like, the third is really where like the meat of it all happens. And while that's like incredibly compelling, that movie especially, it does feel like you wish that a little bit of that could have been spread out more. Even if you had the first movie where like it was all fine and it was all good, and like you're still like on the edge of your seat anticipating when that darkness is going to start creeping in, it does feel like it could have been introduced a bit earlier in the second movie, just so we could like feel like it's a bit more of a believable progression rather than like a bit rushed in the third.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that in the end, if he had written it in the chronological order and not like done the first one, which was 4, thinking this would be his only time to make a movie,
right,
then I think he would have structured it differently, and we would have had completely different beats and all that leading up to what needed to be important for those films. So just the fact that he was going back and building off of something that's happening in the future, that makes the story that's being told best experienced in that order. But if he did, start with number 1, then I'm sure that it probably wouldn't get, even though I enjoy it a lot more these days, Phantom Menace, than I did the first couple times I watched it. I don't think he would have gone where he did with that, and probably built a little bit more of like the intrigue into that first movie to gain momentum through the next 2.
right.
But I'm not George Lucas. I can't really tell you what that movie would have been. But I think just the way it turned out, that I'm always going for the most enjoyment of a film. And I feel like that's, if you have no recollection of what's going on, that would be the way to kind of go along with the surprises and climaxes, all that stuff. So
Good answer.
Well,
Good answer.
it's settled, Andrew. You win. We have a guest on talk about, and he settles it for us. So that's the way it goes.
it's great to see you all.
Yeah.
Sorry I can never come back again.
John just shuts off your stream.
I don't have that power right now. That's in Alan's hand. So yeah.
Alan, you're on my side, man.
Well, so you brought it up
kidding, I have
then
no
that you have like view the Phantom Menace differently now than you did before. And pre-stream you had mentioned a little bit how like the view of Star Wars and your take on it kind of shifts over time.
Mm-hmm.
How has it shifted over time, and why, and what do you think is behind that?
Well, I would have to say that I've gained a lot more appreciation for the prequels. I should probably preface everything with, Andrea, you probably don't know my history with Star Wars, whereas when I was a young child, I knew like nothing about Star Wars other than what was in pop culture. Like I knew the Luke, I'm your father, and swords made out of light, and that was about it. But my family, like no one was ever interested in it, and it just never made its way into my circle. And then college hit, and I started really getting into samurai, being like, samurai's awesome. And then I found out through research that the Jedi were based on samurai, and George Lucas watched a lot of Akira Kurosawa films. Yeah, Alan just corrected me. I know Luke, I am your father is the misquoted all the time.
Yep, that's how it's spread in pop culture. So yeah,
I was gonna say it's like the bastardization of the quote, but it's like what everybody knows. Yeah,
but it's what everyone thinks it is. So then I was like, okay, Star Wars seems like it should be right up my alley. Why am I not like into it? And I think it might have been a little bit of like previous to college, I went to see like the prequels with my friends who were super excited, but they're like, you gotta come see this. And then I saw it, and episode 1, for a kid in, what was it, middle school, I was just like, this is what you're into? This is like
2001.
Like,
99, 2001.
It had some interesting stuff, but like it wasn't anything that I was going crazy over.
Sure.
And then the next ones came out, and it's like, okay, cool, but I don't know. It just never caught me on when I was a kid, and it never caught me on the prequels. And then, for some reason, Force Awakens come out. I think I'll just go see it because whatever, it's the new big movie, and I was hooked. Like J.J. Abrams has a way of kind of, well, his mystery box technique is like very effective, and there's a reason for that, and a reason why I probably shouldn't use it, but it did what it needed to do, and it hooked me, and I was like, okay, that gave me the bug. I went back, watched them all again. I'm like, okay, I'm in, probably too deep. So then I started watching the videos, listening to the things, getting the new theories. And then, I was, they cleared the legends, but I still like learned some of the legend stuff, and it was kind of nice to have a place to get into it, because everything else had kind of been like, there's so much on it. And now it's like I literally have a clean slate that I can actually be up on this. So that was kind of nice. And I just kept on going with it. And before I knew it, like I'd talk to my brother-in-law, who was like the know-all Star Wars guy. I'd be like, oh, did you hear about this? Like the crystal bleeding and weird stuff like that. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, you don't even know, man. Let me tell you. So, I got really into it. The sequel trilogy did what it needed for me. Like it got me excited. And I walked out of Last Jedi not really quite sure how I felt because
Sure.
I had such a strong like I gotta get me a lightsaber and do some backflips once I came out of The Force Awakens. But when I came out of Last Jedi, I was not quite sure, but there's still some super strong stuff in it. And
Mhm.
then, the last one got me back into that kind of. It was fun, but it kind of it's the safe bet of trying to please every single possible Star Wars fan. And I've let like my thoughts and feelings cool on that, and I've come to the conclusion that just like the prequels, they're not perfect. They have a lot of issues, but there's some really good spots and there's some really bad spots. And I'm just gonna love the stuff that I love and not worry about if it destroyed my childhood because I never had a childhood with it. So maybe that helps as well.
Sure.
But I think I have all sorts of theories, which I think we'll get into more with the interview with J.J. Abrams, which I think have been pretty much kind of proven through different interviews and stuff at this point. But I'm excited to see where they go with it now because finally, like everybody's been asking for, like they've got the clean slate to start the new stuff. I believe last week, the High Republic first wave of stuff has been coming out, and so I've been kind of interested in checking some of that out and see where they're going with that. What was the question again?
No, I mean, yeah, just like you'd mentioned how your mood on it and thoughts have kind of changed. So you address that, and how it's because I've had this. I wanted to think that it was possible that I would feel the same way about the sequel trilogy, as with the prequel trilogy, because
Mhm.
I was, I was in the situation where having grown up, I don't know, from 7 or 10 or something like that, like being diehard into Star Wars, that then when the prequel trilogies came out, like I've said I've never gone to a Star Wars movie in the theater that I didn't walk out loving. But then like I calm down and then think about it again. And episodes 1 and 2 for me were pretty big disappointments. But over the years, yeah, I've way cooled on that. And what I've come to why that's not going to happen for me with the sequel trilogy, and Andrea and I have talked about this, is that the that my issues with the prequel trilogy and my issues with the original trilogy have nothing to do with story structure.
Right.
Like bullet points, what happens if you're going to explain it to someone, like just narrate to them like concisely what happens in episodes 1 through 6. I don't have any problems. It all makes sense to me. I like the rise of certain characters and the falls of other and the drama that takes place. Um and then I get to the sequel trilogy and I have major problems with the structure because the sad thing is the production value of the sequel trilogy is far and above. I mean, it's impressive. The
Mhm.
visuals, the cinematography on some things are just better than anything Star Wars has done before.
Mhm.
There has every right to be the best Star Wars, but it can't be because they shit on so much. Because the story I no longer approve of the general story. So whereas I could have issues with small things, acting, unnecessary characters, whatever things in the past, I can't overlook the big parts that I have problems with in the sequel trilogy.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, sorry, just to quickly interject, for me, like the problem with the story isn't that like, oh, I think they should have taken this character another way, or I demand a rewrite of this particular incident, or that kind of like nitpicky thing. It's sort of like I have issues with the inconsistency of the story, of the back and forth, of the, we're going to take this character this way, just kidding, we're going to take them over here, just kidding, now we're taking them back. You know what I mean? Like it's the whiplash that I get with the story, rather than like, how dare they write, in episode 8 in The Last Jedi, how dare that they write that Luke dies in this particular fashion. Like I would have much preferred X, Y, and Z to happen. I don't want to get that specific about the story. It's that I was taken over here, and then this director took me over here, and then J.J. Abrams came in the last part and tried to take me back over here, skipped like 6 or 7 major plot holes to make it happen, and the storyline suffered. So
Yeah.
so I don't want to be like, oh, I'm like one of those fans who's like, how dare you like make this storyline this way? It's like, no, if you were going to
Mhm.
make the storyline this way, you can't like, just conveniently skip over X, Y, and Z to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think number one, me understanding how the sequel trilogy came to be the way that it is and how disjointed it feels isn't really like an excuse for
Yeah.
it's like it's okay for that, whatever. But I do understand that it was
Mhm.
almost it was flawed from the get-go,
Yes.
for
It's an
multiple
explanation.
reasons.
Mhm.
It's the production of it was, and I understand why they kind of thought this way of like, okay, we need to start this off and we need to get, 3 different directors to kind of do it and take the story where it needs to go, because, George Lucas kind of did that where he did write it, but then he had some help and he had different
Right.
directors for the original trilogy. And of course, they're trying to always recreate that same magic that the original trilogy can have. So they're like, we gotta have an entry point for people who have never seen it before. And I'm not gonna lie, J.J. Abrams is probably one of the best people for just getting people invested in the start of something and then running away. Because I think he's kind of proven that he does that with all of his stuff. Like he started up Star Trek, he did Lost, everybody was into that. Um, but he's never really like finished anything. And his whole mystery
Mhm.
box technique that I've looked into on writing techniques, like it's great. It's for the power of imagination, because the things that you can think of are infinite when they don't have anything to stick to. And
Mhm.
that is so powerful for somebody. But the problem is when that becomes the focus, now you have to answer those questions, and that gets messy. And all he did, he laid the foundation, which was the original plan, to basically let's make you as interested in this franchise as possible, and then we'll pass it on to the next 2 directors and writers to figure out where that story takes you.
Mhm.
And so he basically opened up a whole world of questions, especially with Ray's lineage. And then they gave it to Rian Johnson, which I love Rian Johnson, so I was super excited for him
Mhm.
to write this because his other films are great, and I know that he's a great writer.
Yeah.
But and I will defend Last Jedi a little bit. Like it's got its moments, and it's pretty much you split the film down the middle, and anything with Kylo Ren and Rey I love, and anything with the other characters is kind of like, why am I watching this? But
Mhm.
we won't get too far into that. But basically, I think that they gave Rian Johnson like blank slate, like here you go, run with it, see what you can do. And he's like, I'm gonna make my movie. I'm not gonna like worry about this stuff. And I was fine with that, but then they freaked out because everybody also freaked out. And
Mhm.
then they put the reins on hard of like, we got to make sure this third one makes everything work. Everybody's happy at the end. And I honestly think the way that movie is paced for the third one is like he just decided, okay, I'll tweak a couple things to make my next 2 movies that I would have written happen anyway, because that's like
Yes.
2 movies in one,
Yes.
and the ending was kind of always doomed because they didn't give it enough time to build in any way that like felt important.
Yep.
And also, he's kind of screwed. They only did the next 3 in the trilogy because George Lucas had said that he had ideas for that. But like,
Right.
they
keep
destroyed the
taking the ideas.
Emperor. They did like the biggest thing in the galaxy, basically. I don't really know what George Lucas had in mind, but I'm not quite sure how you can do the what can be more climactic and crazy than like literally the rebels overthrowing a gigantic imperial government and military. So I think they're just kind of doomed and trying to figure out like what can be scarier than that. And then a lot of the stuff they did a great job with, always trying to have some kind of internal conflict with Kylo Ren and
Mhm.
Rey, which is why those storylines are so strong. But then everything else is always like, I guess they have to have a chase scene now, so let's have these characters do it. And I don't know. I mean, I walked out of Force Awakens excited, punch in the
Yeah.
air. I walked out of Last Jedi not quite sure. I think I need to see it again to like get back into that headspace. And then I walked out of Rise of Skywalker being like, okay, I can live with this. Like it's kind of like a relief that it's over as well. It's like, okay, we don't have to like worry what they're gonna do with it next. Like it's literally the last one that they said they can do. So
Mhm.
it's very strange.
Yeah.
I do think that they wanted to wrap up the Skywalker saga, but the feeling I got was that the intent here was to make this trilogy and kind of eschew the past as quickly as possible so we can solidify this new set of characters moving us forward. And so I
Mhm.
think that it's kind of a sign of how things win. Like obviously the movies made tons of money and they're monetarily successful.
Mhm.
But everything that came around with them, I think that if it had really in their mind been successful, there'd be more and more with these characters. And instead
Mhm.
you have actors that are disappointed with how they were treated, that were
Yep.
told they were back and forth on what their lineage was and didn't know from the beginning and kind of want nothing to do with it anymore. I mean, it's sort of a
Yep.
Yeah.
sad state when you got John Boyega and Mark Hamill that really don't want to be part of this anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I
And
think that
Harrison Ford didn't even want to be a part of it
no,
for
right.
the
Right.
Yes.
last 20 years.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep. That's true. Um, yeah, we Andrew and I have talked ad nauseum about how it's stunning to us that you know George planned out this saga, and then it was executed to varying degrees of success, but always based on that core story. And so for them to like be given this responsibility to finish up this saga with 3 films and then to give us a hopeful vision of where it can go in the future and to not have an outline of what is going to happen because yeah, there were 3 different directors for the original trilogy, but they all did, like you said, George wrote it. And he was upset
Right.
with the in Empire Strikes Back of him changing his vision too much or whatever and stuff. So there was already that, but it was
Mhm.
still George Lucas's story.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
there was apparently no story for this. And this article kind of with J.J. Abrams' interview, and as you've said, with kind of piecing together what other people have said, they went into this without a plan, and I think it is just a stunning lack of leadership. And I cannot believe that one of the biggest multimedia franchises in the world
Mhm.
wasn't planned out. I mean, what person ever goes into I'm writing a series and doesn't outline it? Like and know what's gonna happen. Like you right, you have to come up with those questions, but it is your responsibility to come up with the answers. Like
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
you end. And yeah, you don't get to I just that to me is really unforgivable because I just don't understand it.
Mhm.
And Ryan Johnson, like I loved Knives Out. Knives Out was an amazing movie.
So good.
It's so good. But they should not have given him one of these movies. Ryan
Mhm.
Johnson should have been given a standalone spin-off Star Wars movie. Hey,
Yep.
Star Wars universe, you can't add like crazy meaningful lore, but you can tell it anywhere in the Star Wars universe you want.
Mhm.
Here's like the existing lore that you get to work with. Make your thing, you
Mhm.
Right.
know. And
How
that
fun
could
do you
have
guys
been really cool.
Yeah, how fun do you guys think it would have been if like he would have been given Solo? You know what I mean?
That yeah, maybe. Yeah. But it's so much it's so tied. Like I really think he wanted to tell his story the way he wants to tell it. And I think he's said as much that he really doesn't care about the canon, the larger scope
Well,
of anything like that. Like it's not his priority
sure.
there is to
Sure. And I totally get that. I'm just like thinking about the movie Solo, like there were so few parts that really had to tie in. Do you know what I mean? Like there were so like very few things that needed to be accomplished. Like basically it's like Han Solo meeting Chewbacca is like the
yeah,
thing that had to happen. Do you know what I mean? Like there was just so much of that movie that I'm like, this has almost no bearing on,
yeah.
what people would think of as canon Star Wars. Like I just think it would be like his type of movie, his type of character to write.
Mhm.
And like if you were like, okay, just give me this one goal and then anything else is up to you. I think that would have been like enough of him to be like, all right, I can work within the parameters of like meeting this one thing that I have to do, and then the rest of it I can just like freeform it.
I'm gonna take the assumption that you guys were not fans of Solo, a Star Wars story.
I am medium. I'm like tepid on Solo.
Okay.
Like I don't hate it. I'm not like, "Oh my god, it's so awful." But
Okay.
I felt like there was more potential there that wasn't
Sure.
realized.
I
So,
need to
and I
see
just
it
think like
again.
Ryan Johnson could have done something really interesting with it.
I
Okay.
was in a bad headspace with Star
Mhm.
Wars when I saw that movie.
Mm,
And I didn't see it in the theater and stuff. So I it didn't get a fair shake for me, though.
sure.
With some of the criticisms I had heard, I thought a lot of them weren't warranted. I thought it was a
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
little
think
unfair to critique the
people were harsh.
performance in comparison to Harrison Ford,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some of that
Yeah.
stuff. And
People
so
were people were too
overall,
harsh.
yeah, overall, I did enjoy the movie. So
Okay.
it deserves another go.
I definitely loved Rogue One, but
Yeah.
then
Yes.
after I watched Solo a couple more times, like I liked it the first viewing, but
Mhm.
honestly, out of all the films, like the pacing and it just being like basically a heist movie, it doesn't even have to be Han Solo, but like it
Right.
was, whatever. Like I just enjoyed the art and the cinematography and
Mhm.
the story built up well. It just kind of became my the one that I have the least gripes with out of all the ones that came since Disney
Yeah.
acquired it. So, I mean, I think that movie really gets a bad shake just because, like, how dare you replace Harrison Ford and
Yeah.
all
Right.
that stuff. And I can see why people would be mad, like, oh, that's how he got his name, because they did do that, like, you have to explain how he gets everything. But in the end, like, that didn't really bother me. Like,
Yeah.
just
Hmm.
enjoy, like, the fun parts, and I don't know.
Mhm.
Ron Howard, give me a call.
You know what Ryan Johnson should have done? He should have had a movie where they were on a jungle planet and you had these young like Jedi, maybe I don't whatever teenagers or something like that. And they're going out to like explore they're kind of like outcasts. They're not doing exactly what they're supposed to be. They're being bad apprentices and they're out exploring this Sith temple there's like ancient ruins. They tell you to stay away from there. Forbidden knowledge, like it's dangerous or whatever, but it's just ruins. Like who cares or whatever. And they go in and it becomes this like almost horror, like things playing with your minds, like forced spirits from Sith Lords past or whatever, and weird stuff as they're like trying to get out. Like they do get in too deep, and they start seeing things and whatever. And what does one of them end up killing the other? What happens here? But they learn their lesson, or none of them survive, whatever it may be. Something there, like doesn't have to be connected to anyone else. No one's name that's tied anywhere. Could be a new planet.
Are you
fresh
testing the waters on your fan fiction on us right now?
I mean, if I do a homebrew D&D of Star Wars, it's going to take place like, Old Republic times for sure. It's going to take place Tales of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic era, and it will definitely deal with like Sith lore and stuff. So, yeah, I'm into that. But I'm just it's something different.
Yeah, I totally agree that after I walked out of the Rise of Skywalker, even though I had spent the last like 2 years trying to like get myself to understand what I did and didn't like about Last Jedi, I was just like, it would have just worked better if they had J.J. Abrams just do his 3 films, and it just, I think everybody, no matter how much you griped about how it ended, it would have just felt better if everything had its chance to breathe. Because like that end moment where she's pulling the shuttle with Kylo Ren, whatever, and it blows up, that seemed like the perfect break for like Chewie's dead. End of the movie. Oh my god! Like, can't believe it.
Right.
Then it's just like 3 seconds later. Hey, I got this Chewbacca guy over here. He's alive, and everyone thinks he's dead.
Right.
Cool. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, everything loses its impact when it's so like jumpy. Like you have to get to like all these 65 plot points. Who cares how we get there? We just have to like
Yeah.
get here and there and tell the story. And
It's like those.
Yeah.
It's like those mysteries or whatever, the weekly mysteries where it's like, find out next week. Will she fall off the cliff? Find out right now. She did. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. There's no like emotional investment because like everything is answered right away.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I saw the potential, and that's what hurt so bad was like.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So
and like when I saw The Force Awakens, I mean, firstly, when I heard that Disney had acquired Lucasfilm, I didn't believe it. Ashley told me she saw it. I was like, what? No way. And then all the canon was wiped, and I'm like, oh man, that's not good. But I understand, and I just was like tentative the whole way, and when I saw The Force Awakens, I'm like, the production value, I was like, I have issues with Rey, but I really got into Rey in that. And I had problems with it's basically a repeat of episode 4. But I'm like, well, look, if they're going for the idea that the average person, let's say the person has either not seen episode 4 or hasn't seen it in like 30 years, or they just don't remember that. It would bring back the nostalgia and the things without them even necessarily knowing why. Like it would just ring true to the original Star Wars. And I was like, okay, well, I will let it go. If they, depending on what's next, like we'll see where this goes. And then I was excited in the Last Jedi because I was sold by the Kylo and Rey connection. I was sold by their performances. I was sold by the way that was done. Even though like I've seen some stunt people break it down and it's got problems, the like their lightsaber battle together and stuff. There's a lot of cool things. But yeah, I can't. it's not enough to make up for like an overall story that is pretty meaningless, and on all the other characters that are forgotten about.
Mhm.
You know, in this process, like Ray and Kylo got all the focus, and that's was the
Yeah.
only interesting part. And everybody else got played second fiddle. You know,
Mhm.
we didn't have the chance to care about Poe or Finn or Luke for that matter. You know, like none of it. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I guess I won't belabor it too long. As I said, we could have an entire episode on. It's probably foolish of me. I probably should have said let's have Dustin on and just do a Star Wars episode. So
Yeah,
because
I feel like
yeah,
I blathered on probably a little too long, but
no.
I got
No,
plenty more.
can never do that about Star Wars on this show.
Good.
There was a time where we had a running streak of mentioning Star Wars on every episode.
It's
I don't know
true.
when that was broken, but we'll have to have you back to talk about more of the
Yes.
like current state of Star Wars, about Mandalorian, about the
Yes.
animated
Oh.
series, anything expanded, all that sort of thing. Some other time we'll have to delve into that as well. So
Yeah, sounds good.
Look at